Are you starting?
Yeah, we're started. Welcome to First
Okay.
in Fiction. All right, welcome to First in Fiction, your first stop for learning to write better fiction. I'm Steve McLean. I'm an aspiring writer.
And I'm Aaron Gansky, author of The Bargain, the Hand of Adonai series, and Firsts in Fiction.
And today we're going to be talking about momentum. Aaron, what is
Yeah.
momentum?
Well, actually, momentum is there's two ways that I look at momentum, and I talk about this a lot in my writing. There's momentum in the discipline of writing, of continuing your work even when you don't feel like it. So working up kind of momentum in that regard, so that the more you work on a project, the easier it becomes. Think of the snowball rolling downhill kind of a thing. And the other aspect of momentum is basically momentum within our fiction, which is simply making our characters move. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
so say that you start feeling kind of stagnant in something that you're writing.
Hmm.
Is what we decided to do, just for those of you watching and listening. We decided to just launch into this. Aaron pitched the idea about 4 seconds before we started this.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going to
It was
catch up with the rest of you and
it
learn
was
what it
five.
is that Aaron's. Yeah, this is
It was
totally
five
live.
seconds.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's 5 seconds. Okay.
So yeah, 5 seconds.
So, Aaron, so when you're stagnating, when you're writing through your book and you start to stagnate a little bit,
Hmm.
what do you do? Do you just throw in conflict or what?
Are we talking about like actually within the fiction, or are we talking about like in the discipline of the writing, like actually finding time in your day to sit down and put words on page?
Well, I'm going to circle back around to that, but you just said
Okay.
something about within the fiction, so
Uh-huh.
I'm just asking
Yeah.
a question about that.
Okay. So within the fiction, when I talk about momentum, what I mean is letting your characters move, and it's exactly what you say, introducing some sort of conflict, but more so rather than just conflict, it's introducing some sort of exterior conflict, some external conflict, as opposed to the internal conflict. A lot of times, our fiction kind of gets bogged down in introspection and thinking, or people walking and talking, and there's really not a lot of interesting things happening. And so momentum within fiction means simply, blow something up if you want to look at it that way. It doesn't have to be that drastic, though. I was reading I'm reading a memoir now called The LA Diaries by Jim Brown. It's fantastic, and I was just reading a section in which he's waiting to talk to a Hollywood executive, and the entire scene is basically him in a waiting room waiting, but he continues the momentum because even though he's waiting and he's anticipating all these horrible things that could happen, and he's not convinced that he's ready to go, and he's trying to go through the pitch in his mind, and does he have all his ducks in a row? There's momentum within his thoughts are moving pretty quickly, but it's also balanced nicely because there's still some forward action in the story. Somebody still asks him a question: can I get you a drink? He'll get up and he'll walk around the room. And a little bit of a spoiler alert here: the scene kind of ends in this wonderfully incongruous scene of windows getting shot out, and it's just like, well, this is not where I expected things to go. But all of a sudden, windows start exploding, and people are getting cut by shards of glass, and it continues happening, and
You're piquing
it's
my interest here. I think
oh,
I'm
it's
read this.
Oh, it's so fantastic. It's so fantastic. But I mean, it starts basically with a drive, and it ends with a drive home in traffic, and there's all that middle part, which is waiting. But you never, as a reader, you don't feel like you're waiting. Um, there's momentum not just in the thoughts, but again, also in people moving around him. He's picking up a magazine, he's reading through it, so things are going on. And that kind of helps prevent a lot of the stagnation. Number one. Number two, it's just for a chapter. It's not like the entire length of a book, and it's only a few pages. So while you can have those moments where you slow down, you don't want to kind of stretch that out to the point where you're like 35 pages of thinking.
Right. Okay, so let's go back to talking about momentum in your self-discipline and your ability to actually sit down and do the writing. So, with this, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Just mentioning it, you get down to finding a specific time of the day that's working for you. You keep that up. The more you do it, the more habit forming it is, that sort of thing. I can see where you're going
Right.
there. What
Right.
else do you have to add?
Well, this seems to be the thing that most writers struggle with the most. I found a lot of passionate resistance, strangely, from writers who this is the crowd that says, basically, I write when I'm inspired. Have you heard this? I
Yeah,
write when I'm
I
inspired.
I don't know.
You've never heard this, Steve?
I may
Maybe I
have
should ask,
said it.
have you ever said this, Steve?
I may have said it
You may
from
have
time
said
to
it.
time.
Yeah, yeah. And I talk about, or actually, Flannery O'Connor talks about the habit of art. And I love that term habit, make it a habit. And a habit is developed over time doing the same thing over and over. Um, but I wrote a post on this some years ago when I first started blogging, and I talked about the habit of art, and all of a sudden I had artists from around the globe and writers from around the globe commenting on my little blog, and I was like, this is crazy, and it was by far my most popular post, and everybody that was chiming in was saying, no, that's absolutely wrong, and you can't write when you're not inspired, and it's horrible if you do, and your project's going to fail, and you're just going to give up on life, and all of these horrible things of how dare you suggest that we write when we're not inspired, or that we try and produce art when we're not inspired. Um, and
I
my
have to think that it's particularly hard. Actually, it would have been good to have your dad on this episode because I would
right,
think that it's pretty hard to have the right level of discipline and inspiration altogether when you have to meet deadlines and you're writing up to 4 or 5 books a year.
yeah,
That's a lot, man.
it
How do
is.
you keep going?
Well, and again, it's momentum. And I use that term. I like that term just because it's gives you this sense of almost an unstoppable movement, and it's something that builds up over time. If you think about the definition of momentum, what is it? It's potential energy as it turns into kinetic energy, right? And we as writers have tons of potential energy. I mean, there are millions of writers out there who could write millions of pages,
Hmm.
but it's just potential energy because it never turns into kinetic energy. I guess maybe there's some irony there in that our kinetic energy as writers is sitting down and not moving, but rather our fiction should be making people move. So I don't know, a little irony there. But the idea is getting up that head of steam. It's inertia, right? Anything that's at rest tends to stay at rest. Anything in motion tends to stay in motion. Maybe that's a better term, momentum and inertia.
Hmm.
And when you're writing on your project, Steve, maybe you can back me up on this. When you're writing on your projects and you're doing it consistently, day upon day upon day, you end up. It becomes easier, doesn't it? Like the pages start to come a little more naturally.
Yeah, I mean, when you're in the, here's the worst thing is when because of work or because of family or whatever, you miss that
Right.
day or
Right.
you miss several days in a row and
Yes.
then, it's a long time before you come back to it. Now your head's not in it again. And what I
Yeah.
find I have to do every time that happens is I have to go back and just reread what I've already written so that I can get back into the mode so
Yeah.
that I know where I left off even. And
Yeah.
man, you want to talk about just killing the inspiration.
Oh
One
yeah.
thing I will say though is the inspiration when it hits me, almost always I find a way to write.
Hmm.
But the rest of the time when I'm not feeling particularly inspired, um, I'll sit down and there will be times where I'll just stare at the
Yeah.
Word document.
Yep.
Nothing ever
Yep.
really comes out. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's boy, that doesn't feel like momentum. That doesn't feel like
No.
inertia.
No, not at all. Or it's inertia at rest, right?
Right.
You've been at rest and now you tend to stay at rest. It's like that car trying to, at the stoplight trying to get going. It takes a lot of energy to get that going. And once you're up at the freeway speeds, man, you take your foot off the gas, you're still going to go for a long time.
Right. And this brings to mind something that Yuvi actually said on one of the podcasts a while back, which we need to have that guy back on the show,
We
man.
need
I'm
to,
telling you.
if we, yeah, he's hiding, I think.
Yeah, he's like
He's,
dropped off the face of the planet. I tried to
he's,
send him a Facebook invite,
yeah,
and yeah, I don't think he signed on to Facebook. And
yeah, yeah,
so
like years. Yeah. Hopefully he's all right. I hope
yeah,
everything's well. We'll look him up. We'll find him someplace.
he could just be under his desk still.
He might
Just
be under his
crying.
desk crying. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, something that he said was being very intentional with your writing. So if you only have 5 or 10 minutes in a day to devote to it, you need to be thinking about what you're going to use that time for. You need to be thinking about the story and being intentional. So when you do sit down, you can maximize that time as much as possible because you've already
Hmm.
got a game plan in mind. You're just going to go sit
Right.
down, do what you've planned to do, and then walk away from it. And now
Right.
you've maximized that time, and you get the most output for your or the biggest bang for your buck.
Right. And I would agree with that. And I think that, as you mentioned earlier, rereading what you've already written is a very valuable tool, to kind of get you back in there, to kind of get up that head of steam, to overcome that inertia of being at rest. And I think,
I'll tell
one
you
thing.
though, it's bad for you in the sense of as you're reading through it, you are compelled to edit like you would not believe. I mean,
Yeah.
you're reading through it and you're like, oh man, this needs to change. Oh, that needs to change. And some of the things you change and then, or I change, and then I get a few chapters down the way and I realize, oh shoot, that's why I had that in there is because I did this. Well, now I need to go back and change that again. And yeah,
Yeah.
getting out of it is it's a bad deal, man. Bad
It can
news.
definitely cost you a lot of time. I'll tell
Yeah.
you kind of how I handle that, and is I will take my text and I will convert it into an MP3. Even with the soulless text to speech software, it's just like the robot voice going on.
I'll tell you something about that. After about 5 minutes, it starts
Uh-huh.
to become transparent to you. You hear the words, and your mind does the work of fitting it in right and
Right,
re interpreting the words and that sort of thing.
right, right. Yeah, and but for me, it's a valuable tool because since I'm not at my computer, I can't edit. And
Right.
so if there's a glaring inconsistency or something like that that needs to be addressed, then yeah, I'll make a mental note. Oh, I got to fix this when I get to my computer. But like on my drive to and from work, this is a great opportunity to, if you've been at rest for a while, to really get it back into it. And momentum can be developed not just by writing, but also thinking about writing, planning, outlining, snowflaking. All of that kind of stuff would still count as working on your project. I would think of it as immersing yourself in your
Right.
project, making sure that your feet are still wet in the world that you've created. And so when you come back to it, you're familiar with it, and you're able to just pick up where you left off without any sort of delays.
Yeah. Oh man, I got to tell you, I know how it feels though when you sit down and despite all the stuff that we're talking about, you sit down and you have to get started again after that long break. What are some of the strategies that you use to just get the ball rolling in the first place?
In addition to listening to what I've done, I will go back and I'll reread, with the I'll do some editing. I'll take a day, go back and reread, and I'll allow myself some time to edit. I'll go back and look at some notes that I've made, some of the initial notes, kind of ask myself where the project is. And sometimes, like the first day or two, I'm not going to get words on page. I'm not going to write a new scene. I just have to be content with the fact, like if we go back to what UV talks about, being intentional with your time. Hey man, I've been out of my book for a week, 2 weeks. I'm going to need to take another day or two, not only to reread, but also to start outlining where I want to go next. And even though I am very much an avid discovery writer, pantsters as they call it, can't even say it
What?
out loud. Plotter versus pantsters.
What is Panster?
They write by the seat of their pants.
Ah,
Have you not heard this term before?
now I get it. Okay.
They
No.
they use it on writing excuses.
Oh, really? I need to listen
Yeah.
to that show more. I gotta tell you.
Yes.
I,
They just
I
ignore
actually
it.
just re-downloaded the podcast app and started using it again,
Okay.
and I was listening to an episode of Writing Excuses today. So
Hey, good for you. So they've got some good stuff. I like writing
they're not on
excuses.
Stitcher. I that's how I get most of my content is through Stitcher.
Ah,
And because they're not on Stitcher, I just kind of stopped listening to them, which is unfortunate because they have a really good show. So, but
maybe
now
we
I've got
should.
podcasts again.
We'll tweet them and see if they can hook up
I did,
Stitcher.
but you should
Yeah, what did
tweet
they say?
Dan because he actually responds to you, right?
Yeah, Dan. Well, Dan tweeted me back. Mary tweeted me back one time as
Oh, she
well.
did. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Brandon tweeted me back, but it was over 160 characters, I think, is what happened. So it rejected it.
Really?
I don't know. I don't think Brandon Sanderson is capable of tweeting. His tweets are like 160 pages or less. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
that's a Brandon Sanderson tweet.
Right.
So,
It's
um,
just a link to the thing he actually wanted to say.
yeah, exactly. So the 19-page article.
Right.
Uh, so speaking of writing excuses, which is sponsored by
Audible. Yeah,
Audible.com,
dude, I was gonna have you talk about this. So
and
your book now, The
yeah,
Bargain,
uh-huh,
is on Audible.
yes, it is, and super excited. I just finished listening to uh, the audio a couple weeks ago. It is fantastic. Josh Goodman did the reading for it. Fantastic job.
Yeah.
Just nailed it. And I was very professional quality. Really good to work with him. I can't say nice things about him. So if you haven't had a chance to read my book and you've got long commutes, pick that up on audible.com/excuse. Start your free trial membership. That's what they say on writing
Yeah,
excuses.
that's right.
I was
We're
channeling
sending them business
my
here.
inner Howard there.
So
So
when you search for it, you're gonna have to type in
the bargain
Bargain
Gansky.
Gansky
Yeah,
because
that's
there's some pretty smutty stuff that pops up if you just type in the
there
bargain.
are other
Oh my
bargains that
goodness.
are being made. Yeah, other
I'm
bargains
buying
than
these ones.
yeah.
Wow.
Oh come on, you already have them on your Kindle. You know that.
Hey, hey.
No. Oh, sorry, not on air. Should we
Yeah,
edit that
there
out?
it is.
Yeah.
Wow, 1 credit. I'm gonna add this to my cart right now.
Yay.
Yeah, I
So
wanted to do this on the show. So
there you go. Just guilt trip everybody who hasn't done it yet.
here we go. Okay. All right, wait, hold on. Here's what I'm gonna do, okay? I
Okay.
think this will show up on the YouTube stream. Okay. So
There
here's
it
my
is.
shopping cart. All right. Next step. Uh-oh. Oh no, hold on. I have to enter my
Yeah.
password. I don't
Show
really
your
want to show
pass.
that off. Hold
I
on.
know what your password is. It's dot 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 dot.
Hey, mine's a bunch of stars too. That's weird.
Yeah, that's fancy.
All right.
Maybe what we can do on the audio version is actually put the retail sample up front for the podcast, or
Oh,
at the
you know
end.
what?
We'll
Actually,
do it. We'll do a stay tuned. We'll do it at the end.
I can actually play that for you right now.
Should we do it in the
It
middle
will
or should we
go.
do it at the end?
It'll go into the stream, but I don't know if you'll actually be able to hear it.
Yeah.
But
Let's just do the MP3 at the end of the audio. So if you're watching on YouTube, the show notes should go up on Sunday, and we will put not only we'll put a link on the show notes to the Audible
yeah.
version of my book, and
Okay.
we'll also
There it
put
is.
the
Oh, thanks for
MP3
your
on it for you.
purchase. Thanks for your purchase. Start listening with our free app. Wow, this is awesome.
Audible is nice. Audible should sponsor us.
Yeah.
And I wonder how we should. Yeah. Steve, I'm going to put you in charge of that because you have so much time.
Oh, okay. Ooh, you know what? I'm actually going to need to retitle our podcast from Killing Darlings.
Yeah.
Everyone, I think this is a good opportunity right now to say Heather is not with us tonight because she we think was hit in the head by a baseball
Yeah.
while at a game,
Freak
fly
fly
ball.
ball.
And apparently she has a concussion, and they took her to the hospital. Her husband
Yeah.
texted Aaron.
Yeah.
So, yeah, pray for her that she's okay.
Yeah. Definitely keep her in your prayers, and I'm sure she's all right, but a concussion, you never want to play around with that. So hopefully she'll recover soon, and if we hear anything, we'll let you know on the First and Fiction page on Facebook. Yeah. So make sure you're checking into that.
Oh man. Okay. So anyway, yeah. So I haven't actually had a chance yet to listen to this, to hear how good it sounds, but I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm excited.
Yeah.
So I got it now.
Yeah, I think you'll be very, very pleased. So really happy with that.
So something I was going to ask you, you're just now getting back into writing book 4 of the Hand of Adonai series, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are you doing right now to get back in the mode?
I am. I've got a few steps in mind. Right now, I've decided to, since I'm on book 4, that I need to do a little bit of outlining, and so I'm going through doing some. I'm outlining my characters, doing some more kind of imagining of my characters, figuring out who they are to try and flesh them out a little bit more. Some of the side characters, trying to
Did you have to get
develop them
reacquainted with
more.
all of this, or did you just kind of pick right back up where you left off? No problem.
Some of the characters I know, but I've challenged myself to ask questions that I don't know, questions about them that I'm not familiar with, to try and understand them in a new way.
Hmm.
A lot of the characters, since they were just side characters, they don't have a lot of words on page. They don't have a lot of space in the first three novels, but their role is going to be increased in book four. I'm having to really kind of look at them and figure out how do I take them from um, stock side character into something a little more memorable and
Hmm.
unique. Now, once I'm done with that, my next step is actually going to be going back to book three and inputting changes from my beta readers. And by doing that, with an understanding of where I'm going in book four, after I'm done kind of outlining book four, the changes that I make to book three are going to better reflect what I have planned for book four, and that's going to move me seamlessly into, ideally, hopefully, knock wood, the writing of book four.
All right.
So
Very
that's kind
cool.
of how I'm going to keep my mojo going.
Right on.
Yeah.
So, do you? I know you used to do a lot of blog posting,
Hmm.
like a lot of writing that wasn't just writing in your books. Do you still
Yes.
do a lot of that?
Yes. A lot of mentoring. I mentor writers, so I'm doing a lot of reading and editing of those pages, the writing, the show notes and stuff for our podcast. Doing that. Um,
Are you
I've
finding that all of that stuff is helping your momentum, or is that dragging you down? Be honest.
show notes drag me down.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, well, in context of momentum, but I've scheduled time, so it doesn't interfere with my writing time. But I think the mentoring, even though it does cut into my writing time, um, it keeps me fresh. You
hmm.
know, we talked last week about reading like a writer, and it forces me to do that on a weekly basis, and so I'm always learning and keeping my skills sharp, ideally. So it cuts into time, and it does kind of hurt my momentum a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, that's why it becomes increasingly important to find time, you know, another time that I can protect for my writing. I try and schedule that stuff on days where I don't normally do my writing, or during the hours of the days when I'm not writing.
Right. All right. Well, do you have anything else that you want to talk about jump back into the actual the story writing at all? Generating and keeping momentum in the story writing. Did you have some more comments there?
Other than just knowing the balance between stillness and having moments of quiet, having moments in the waiting room. Um, as Charles Baxter talks about, this idea of stillness really makes things pop, the action pop on either side.
Hmm.
So don't be afraid when I say momentum and get momentum and get things going. Don't be afraid to take a moment of stillness where things are quieting down and things are still for a moment. Just don't prolong that for very long. Find that balance, try and strike that balance, and
Right.
then shoot out some windows.
Yeah, a book I was writing years and years ago that I've given up on. Well, I've put it up on the shelf for right now.
Hmm.
I may eventually work on it again, but it's the book that I was actually working on when you and I met,
Hmm.
however long ago it was.
I remember.
And the main character comes into a point in the story where everyone's talking about how there's going to be this battle. It's like a sci-fi space drama type of book, and they're talking about yeah, we think that there's going to be a pretty big battle, and it's probably going to be the biggest we've seen. And he says, why do you think that? They said, well, we haven't seen any kind of altercation with the other side in about 7 months. It's just been quiet. And so we
Hmm.
anticipate when it does happen, it's going to be a pretty big fight.
Yeah.
And I then I knew that if you just on one side of it, you sidle it up next to a big long silence, something where it's the calm before the storm, it provides the contrast. that you can just back up against, and it makes what you're writing so much more impactful when you jump into the action, and the action comes right after a moment where everything has been very calm and placid.
Right. Well,
So
it's the Cold War, isn't it? It's when things are building up and things are building
tension,
up, and yeah,
definitely.
it's that tension. It's that moment of slow motion in the movie theaters when things are about to explode and everything kind of slows down that moment before.
Right.
It's your life flashing before your eyes before your car actually gets hit by the train or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that stillness can be very, very powerful, but the problem is when it goes too long, then readers start to lose interest. So
Yeah, and you talked a little bit about the internal dialogue and that sort of thing. I guess that would be monologue, not dialogue, right?
yeah, interior monologue, yeah, it's fine.
Right. When you're talking about those sorts of things, or you're writing about those sorts of things, and the scene goes very much internal, you're saying that that generally really does have a tendency to slow things down significantly, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. And I find that when most writers are doing this, what they're actually doing is trying to figure out what their character is really thinking,
Right.
or they want to play it up for the reader. They want the reader to really, really know what's going on inside of this character's mind. Well,
Right.
the problem with that is if you have to tell me, it goes back to the show don't tell, right? I should be able to know what your character is thinking without actually having to jump inside their mind. The only exception to this would be when they are thinking within their voice, if that makes sense.
Right.
If they're making some sort of sarcastic comment that can't necessarily be shown with the face, or with body language or something like that, or some sort of action. These types of quips or something like that within the voice of the character, those can stay. And I think what it is uh, in order to kind of when you're revising, I would say when you're revising, you're going back through and you see those long passages of introspection and interior monologue. It's probably a sign that you were trying to figure out what the character was thinking. So now you
Right.
know. And now you know what that character does based on what they think. And so you can take those 2 or 3 pages of introspection and cut that back to, a couple paragraphs. Readers never need as much as we think they need. And
That's why, I mean, that's what flashbacks are for,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, I mean, you can use flashbacks. Flashbacks can be used effectively, but yeah, I mean, even if it's not a flashback, even if it's just a quick thing like, you know, um, he missed Laura then, or something like that. Just something simple like that. We don't need to know who Laura is or why he
Yeah.
misses her just then. Like we'll figure that out later. Like right now, just that one line is all we need, rather than he missed Laura then. Laura was, and then we kind of jump into that info dump.
I've heard that flashbacks are kind of a bad thing. That's why I said that. I don't know. Am I
Depends on
wrong?
how they're used.
Yeah.
It is if you read Corpus Christi by Brett Anthony Johnston, you want to talk about an effective use of flashbacks. The
It's been a
man,
few episodes since you've mentioned him, by the way.
it has been his new. Well, while we're talking about novels, his new novel is out now. Remember Me Like This, and you should go buy it because he's uh, simply the most incredible writer that I've read. One of the most incredible writers that I've read by far. Um,
What was the name of it again?
it's called Remember Me Like This. You can
Remember
find
me?
it on
Yes.
Yeah, you can find it on Amazon. It's not too tough. Brett Anthony Johnston, incredible guy.
Future Aaron, when you're listening to this, remember
Hmm.
to include a link in the show notes to
Sure.
his book.
Wow. And then when I put it in, it'll be like a flashback to
That's
when
right.
we recorded this. So, but
All
yeah,
right, man.
if you read his, he uses flashbacks very, very well indeed.
Cool. Okay.
You can learn a lot by reading that book. Corpus Christi is the one that I'm referring to. I haven't read Remember Me Like This yet, just because it released yesterday, so I haven't
Oh,
had an
okay.
opportunity to get my hands on it. But I will soon. I will soon.
Very good. All right, man. Well, I think that pretty much covers everything, unless you had any parting thoughts.
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
So
How could people
yeah,
get in touch with us?
they can email us at firstinfictionpodcast@gmail.com. can always find us on Facebook and Twitter at First in Fiction. And am I forgetting something?
How can people get a hold of you?
Oh, me. AaronGansky.com. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter too. I hang out. Tweet me. I'll tweet you back. I promise.
Most importantly, you can find Aaron's books on Amazon by searching for Aaron Gansky. And his book, The Bargain, just came out. Type in The Bargain and Gansky, and that should pop up there for you. And he's on Audible. So
I'm on Audible.
Get your audio copy of The Bargain. It's a good book. And I'm not just saying that because I'm friends with Aaron. I'm saying that because I've actually read it and believe it's a good book. So
thank you very much.
I'd probably be pretty brutally honest if I didn't like it.
Yes. You tell me all the time you don't like my face, that I'm ugly and it makes you want to weep. No.
Long, awkward silence.
Awkward. Yeah.
Silence is good, right? You said that's good?
Silence, stillness.
Stillness
is good, yeah.
What about just pure awkwardness?
Not as good.
No?
Not as good. So.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll put a retail sample of The Bargain, the Audible version of The Bargain, at the end of this podcast. If you're listening on audio, I don't think we can do it on YouTube. So.
Yeah, we can't. For those of you on YouTube, actually, what I'll do is we'll just hang out here for just another second after we sign off the show, and for those of you on YouTube, I will play a soundbite for you. So, Aaron, why don't you sign us out, man?
All right. Well, thank you all for listening, and until next week,
good writing. Okay, so that's the end of the iTunes show. Now, let me get to Audible.
This is so exciting. So exciting.
And I'm going to go and I'm going to find...
Should be a retail sample on Audible.
The Bargain Gansky. There we go. Okay, here's the retail sample. Aaron, I don't know if you're going to be able to hear this, so I will let you know when it's over.
All right.
Okay, I'm stopping it right there. If you're interested, go download a copy at audible.com. Go get it. Did you hear any of that, Aaron? Could you hear it? No?
Very, 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 very faintly.
Yeah.
Very faintly.
All right. Well, that was an audio sample. It should show up there on YouTube for everyone. If it didn't, then
listen to the podcast.
Yeah, listen to the podcast.
Be at the end of the podcast.
There's just like a long, awkward silence at the very end.
Just us making faces at each other.
Yeah.
This is awesome. It doesn't get much better.
I think it's not going to show up in the YouTube.
Oh, yay.
It's not going to.
Oh, man.
But it did show up in my audio feed, so go download the podcast.
There you go. That sounds awesome.
All right.
Excellent.
All right, that's it, guys. Thank you very much for watching our awkward show.
Have a good night, guys.